The emergence of civil society is a major topic of Chinese political research. And this completely blew me away. One of the most fashionable concepts in China today is corporatism. I didn't know it, but there's an enormous literature on corporatism in China. Right? And the main question that they're asking is whether they can move from state corporatism to societal corporatism without becoming democratic. They stay, the party keeps its monopoly, and they're fine. There's a lot of consensus, incidentally. This is not a bad thing for a country as big and diverse as China. So can they move from a strictly state party-dominated form of corporatism to a, I won't say Swedish or Austrian, but anyway, something a little bit more like that, without becoming democratic in between, so to speak. I was not very encouraging in my response to this question, but nevertheless, this is an example of what they're doing. So they very well know that the academic discipline that can generate the highest level of accurate information about these kind of topics is political science. And it can do it without threatening the party's hegemony or monopoly over power. That's the nice thing about political science, as they see it. To my surprise, I encountered no resistance or reservations about giving a course on democratic theory and practice. No one vetted my syllabus or blocked access to any of the readings I placed on the internet or distributed in class. As far as I could tell, no government official monitored my classroom, although several junior colleagues sat in occasionally. What I did experience was a great deal of interest in learning how real existing Western democracies function. And incidentally, especially high level of interest in newly existing Southern and Eastern democracies, and of course, first and foremost, Taiwan, but also South Korea and Indonesia. Because Chinese are very convinced that there's something peculiar about Asian political culture, and therefore Asian experiences with democracy are seen as particularly significant for themselves. My net impression from the course at Fudan and from the lectures elsewhere was that the desire to learn from me how Western and Southern and Eastern democracies are functions has little or nothing to do with admiring or imitating them. Chinese social scientists are supremely confident in the strength and uniqueness of their own several thousand-year-old civilization and in the inappropriateness of Western or Northern democracy for governing this enormous and culturally different society. They're much more interested in learning about the mistakes and failures of real existing democracy than about its successes. And I think they hoped to learn from me how to avoid copying or making the same mistakes. So the central debate that's going on, literally at this moment in China, is whether or not in this project to build this mammoth new discipline, whether they should create political science in China or Chinese political science. This would be the real South, I suppose. So whether China should simply do its best to assimilate the concepts, theories, and methods that is best practiced in the Northwest, or to create a new political science rooted in the distinctiveness of Chinese culture, society, economy, and polity. I did not feel competent to enter in this debate, obviously biased as I am in favor of the first alternative, political science in China. So what I did, and I discovered my students do, there's an easy way out if you go to China. You talk about political science with Chinese characteristics. It apparently sounds very good in Chinese. I couldn't pronounce it well, but I mean, so it's not Chinese political science. It's not just political science in China, but it's political science with Chinese characteristics. And now I think about it, I think that's what I learned and I hope contributed to here in Brazil, is political science with Brazilian characteristics. It wasn't just political science here, it was with Brazilian characteristics. Now, whatever the eventual resolution of this dispute about what kind of political science they should be promoting, much of the outcome, of course, will depend on the critical reception that those hordes of PhD and MA candidates from China who are now studying abroad will bring back from their exposure to the West, to Western and Northern political science. And I must say, talking to many of them, they come back often very critical, particularly of American political science. They find American political science or American political science departments much less relevant for what they do. And in fact, I got the hint that they're going to orient this program more and more toward Europeans, and perhaps even eventually other places as well in Latin America. Now, so the question of what these Chinese graduates are going to bring back from this mammoth experiment of sending so many students to study political science all over the world is perhaps the main critical determinant as to what we'll avoid. But the tension between Chinese political science and political science in China is, I think, likely to be very creative and productive of new concepts, new approaches, and new theories about politics. So the very tension that they seem to be building into the way they're doing it, I think is likely to be particularly creative. So the southern wind, particularly from Latin America, has already proven strong enough to have affected special niches in the West and North. The coming east wind may not be as overwhelming as Mao would have liked it, but I'm convinced that it will blow away at least some of our mainstream assumptions and hypotheses, not the least of which is our assumption that for political science to flourish, the polity within which it operates has to be democratic. China is to try to do this while remaining autocratic and using political science as a way of doing so. Right? Although the long-term and unintended consequences may be to make it a differently democratic, an Eastern democratic polity. Thank you.
I have a question maybe on, really, one way to ask it is, so why do the Chinese find American political science departments less and less relevant, or I think that was the word you used. And does that have to do, in your view, I thought the talk was going to start moving actually toward where is a comparative analysis going, in your view, and the tension to, on the one hand, create universal theories, right, and parsimonious models, which is very much the American tendency to do that, right, the exceptionalism but the universalism. And yet also trying to understand differences and context. And now you've seen sort of the rise and fall of regional studies. We've seen a push towards rational choice and quantitative modeling. And then that has somewhat receded. So you see the issue of the relevance of political science departments linked to where is political science, and particularly comparative politics,